22nd of September 2025. The day before yesterday,
Recording in progress.
I spoke mainly about the 6th and the 7th armies of Mara, fear and doubt. While explaining doubt, I covered its characteristic, function, and proximate manifestation. I didn't yet discuss its proximate cause, so today I will talk the proximate cause of doubt. The proximate cause of doubt is unwise attention. This unwise attention is not the same as negative thinking, which we have discussed earlier when I talk about the yoniso manasikara, positive thinking or wise thinking, wise attention. Here it specifically means unwise attention to the meditative object. That is when you fail to observe the meditation object properly with precision, systematic observation and clear comprehension, then doubt tends to arise. How does unwise attention cause doubt? Let's talk. As you know, in order to observe the presently arising object, you must apply accurate aiming and sufficient effort. Accurate aiming is also known as initial application, placing the mind properly on the meditation object, placing the mind properly on the meditation object, and when this mind plays the mind on the meditative object, arising object, the another mentality arise which place the mind sustainedly on the meditative object. So the two qualities, accurate aiming, then sufficient and effort, then the sustained application. When these qualities, especially accurate aiming and effort, are lacking, the mind fails to land properly on the object. It simply hovers, drifts, or bounces off. As a result, you cannot clearly identify or understand what you are observing. For example, if you are trying to observe the rising and falling of the abdomen, the object becomes unclear. You may think, is this rising or falling? Is it really happening? Am I just imagining it? Let alone perceiving the sensations and deeper characteristics within arising and falling without wise and clear attention, you may not even able to recognize the primary object itself. When the object is not clear, the mind becomes confused. And when clarity is lost, doubt arises. Similarly, when you observe mental objects without wise attention, doubt tends to arise. You may find yourself questioning, is this really thinking or something else? Am I actually thinking? Or is this just a vague sensation? Has my mind really wandered off, or am I still with the object? You yourself may find questioning in this way. So in this way, unwise attention leads to uncertainty and confusion, the fertile ground for doubt to grow. Moreover, if you do observe rising and falling, rising as rising, falling as falling, without refined and systematic attention, you won't be able to clearly explore the individual characteristics such as hardness, softness, tension, movement, warmth, etc. Then again, doubt arises. Was that hardness or stiffness? Was it tension or tightness? And so on. This lack of clarity leads to hesitation and second guessing, the classic sign that doubt has taken hold. In this way, the lack of proper wise attention becomes the root cause for the arising of doubt. At the same time, the mind becomes dull and foggy, generating sluggishness, lethargy, and the hindrance of sloth and torpor. This further weakens the ability to clearly perceive the meditation objects and their characteristics. As clarity fades, the practice begins to feel dry, dissatisfaction, and boring. It brings no joy, no calm, no rapture, no peace, and no mental bliss. And again, doubt arises. Is it really true that this meditation brings joy, rapture, peace, and mental bliss? Again, doubt arises. So without wise attention, there is no mindfulness. Without mindfulness, there is no concentration. Without concentration, there is no wisdom. And without wisdom, one cannot see mind and matter, or physicality and the mentality clearly and discriminately. When one does not see mind and matter as they really are, one remains doubtful about the existence of a personal soul or an eternal soul. And again, without discerning mind and matter, one also fails to see cause and effect. And this leads to further doubt, doubt about a creator, doubt about karma and its results, doubt about past lives, and doubt about future lives. In this way, all of these deeper existential doubts have their root is one thing, the failure to apply wise, clear, and direct attention to present reality. And finally, doubt about one's own ability and one's practice arises. This is why unwise attention is the proximate cause of doubt. Now, it becomes clear that unwise attention is the true antidote to doubt, especially when it manifests as sustained attention or continuous application to meditation object. This sustained application or application is known as in Pali vichara. It works hand in hand with initial application or vitaka, which is the mental factor that aims the mind and place in on the object, onto the object. Once vitaka brings mind to the object, vichara keeps it there, anchoring the mind in steady contact. In steady contact. You might wonder, isn't knowledge the real antidote to doubt? The answer is yes, but in order to develop knowledge, we first need initial and sustained application. Without initial and sustained application, knowledge cannot arise. It is initial application that places the mind on the object, repeated, sustained awareness, and opens the door to understanding. Therefore, sustained application is both the beginning and the support for insight. It is the first weapon we must use against doubt. I repeat, vitaka is the mental factor that places the mind directly on the meditation object. We have already discussed very much about this. As you repeatedly bring your mind to the object with clarity and intention, another mental factor naturally arises. That is, vichara in Pali, sustained application. Vitaka is initial application, vichara is sustained application. If vitaka is like placing the mind on the object, the vichara is like robbing, anchoring or keeping the mind steadily connected to the object. These two mental factors work together harmoniously. Vitaka, initial application, repeatedly brings the mind back to the object. Vichara, sustained application, keeps the mind engaged, steady and undistracted once it is there. An example is given when you hone a blunt knife on a grindstone. The first step is to place the knife properly on the stone. Then you grind or rub it repeatedly to make it sharp. Sharp. In this analogy, placing the knife properly on the grindstone is like Vitaka, initial application. The initial application which places the mind on the meditation object. Rubbing or grinding the knife steadily is like the sustained application, which keeps the mind engaged with the object through repeated contact. Just as sharpening a knife requires both accurate placement and steady grinding, developing mental sharpness in meditation requires both vitaka, initial application, and vichara, sustained application, working together. One brings the mind to the object, the other keeps it there. Together they help build stability and clarity. This sustained application, known as vichara, one of the jhanic factor. So vichara is one of the jhanic factor. Vitaka is also a jhanic factor. It is directly opposite to the Thina Midda, sloth and torpor, which I have already discussed. Thina Midda is also one of the hindrances. Doubt is also one of the hindrances, and the antidote of the two doubt is the vichara, which is one of the jhanic factor. When vichara is present, the sustained application is present, the mind stays closely connected to meditation object, reducing wavering and mental drifting and confusion. In this way, steady contact, clarity arises and doubt naturally fades away because the object becomes directly known through experience rather than speculation. Doubt thrives when the mind loses contact with the object and starts asking, I am doing it right? Is this is the right method? Is anything even happening? And so on. But when sustained application keeps the mind grounded in the object, such questions fade, not because they are forcefully suppressed, but because they are answered by direct seeing. And when direct seeing begins to take place, meditation becomes more alive. You begin to experience clearly the nature of body and mind, sensations, cause and effect, then impermanence. These experiences bring confidence and clarity. You may even find yourself looking forward to interviews with your teacher, eager to share what you have observed, what shifted, and what you have newly understood. What you have newly understood. In this way, fear also subsides. There is no fear of the teacher, no fear of failure, no fear of having nothing to report, because the practice becomes genuine and experiential confidence grows and the path begins to unfold naturally. So this is how we deal with fear and doubt. The sixth and the seventh armies of Mara, through initial application and sustained application. These two mental factors help to place the mind on the object and keep it there. I will talk later again how we can uproot the doubt uh, through the development of insight knowledge. So we will talk later. Now moving on to next point with connection, as initial application is repeated again and again, it supports the growth of sustained application, which I just mentioned as vichara. Of course, all of this depends on the presence of right effort. With these mental qualities working together, the mind begins to see directly as they truly are. However, at the beginning of the practice, there is neither deep knowledge nor even full mindfulness yet. What arises first is simply perception. sanya in Pali. The first is, what arises first is simply perception. Perception recognizes and records the object, rising as rising, falling as falling, thinking as thinking, sensation as sensation, movement of the feet or body as movement. So there is two functions of perception. It recognizes and it records. These two are the functions of the perception sanya, which is sanya in Pali. This basic recognition and record are essential because a strong, clear perception is necessary for mindfulness to arise. As meditators place their attention repeatedly on the meditation object and sustain it there, this act of recognition and recording becomes more stable and continuous. Over time, this sustained and steadfast recognition gives rise to true mindfulness because takes the emphasize that the proximate cause of mindfulness is sustained, steadfast perception. I repeat, the proximate cause of mindfulness is sustained, steadfast perception. For this reason, meditators should aim to recognize and record every moment of the meditation object with precision, and most importantly, without discrimination. Without discrimination, you should not judge the meditation object as good or bad, pleasing or unpleasing, wholesome or unwholesome. Uh, just as a video or audio recorder captures whatever is present without bias or commentary, the meditator's task is simply to observe and register the reality of the present moment. Like a recorder, your responsibility is to approve or is not to approve or reject, but simply to recognize and record the obvious object as it arises, whether it's the rising and falling of the abdomen, a thought, a sound, or a sensation or a feeling. This non-reactive observation is the heart of developing true mindfulness. If you want to develop mindfulness in the rising and falling of the abdomen, keep observing, recognizing and recording. If you want to develop mindfulness in mental objects like thoughts, emotions, intentions, keep observing, recognizing, and recording. If you want to develop mindfulness in sensations or feelings, whether pleasing, unpleasing, or neutral, keep observing, recognizing, and recording. If you want to develop mindfulness in movement of feet or body, keep observing, recognizing, and recording. If you want to develop mindfulness during daily activities, from the moment you wake up in the morning until the moment you go to sleep at night, keep observing, recognizing, and recording. This is what you need to do to develop mindfulness. You have to keep observing, recognizing, and recording the presently arising object without discrimination, good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, wholesome or unwholesome. You should not approve or reject. You should just accept and observe the object as it is. Then only the mindfulness develops. When you observe continuously, persistently, or when you observe, recognize, and record continuously and persistently, the perception becomes firm or steadfast, then that is the root cause to develop the mindfulness. But do not forget effort. Effort is not just the force that propels the mind towards the meditative object. It is also what allows the mind to stay steadily, to merge with and to sink into the object. The Satipatthana Sutta emphasizes that mindfulness here is not just simple awareness or attention. It is steadfast, firm, and closely established mindfulness. This steadfast, firm, and closely established quality of mindfulness comes from the word patthana. From the word patthana. This is why the Buddha did not merely use the term sati in the discourse on the four foundations of mindfulness. Instead, he used satipatthana, which includes both sati and patthana. It signifies mindfulness that is not ordinary awareness, but deliberately and firmly established on the object, grounded, unwavering, and sustained. Uh, its characteristics also emphasizes the quality as non-wobbling, Non-wobbling is the characteristic of the mindfulness. Non-wobbling or non-superficiality is the defining characteristic of sati. This means the mind should not float away from the object, nor remain on the surface. The traditional simile is of a cock or a dried hollow pumpkin placed in water. It bobs up and down, always skimming the surface, never sinking. But mindfulness is not like that. True mindfulness does not skim over the object, it sinks into it, plunges deeply, and remains steadfast and unmoving. It stays fully connected with the object, moment by moment, not drifting, not wavering. So, to avoid drifting or wavering, and instead to sink or plunge into the object, effort is again required. Again, effort is required. Without sufficient effort, the mind will simply touch the surface. It will not truly penetrate or merge with the object. Moreover, a swift plunging is necessary because physical and mental objects arise and pass away quickly. If you delay, the object will already be gone and the mind will miss it. So effort is required. Effort is required. You have to apply sufficient effort. If sufficient effort is not applied, you will delay. Mind will delay and you will not be able to catch the object, whether physical or mental object. You will delay because mind and matter or physicality and the mentality, they arise and pass away swiftly. If we talk about the mind, within a second, millions and billions of minds, consciousnesses arise and pass away. Just imagine how quickly do they arise and pass away, how swiftly they arise and pass away. Physicalities, physical objects, matter, objects also arise and pass away swiftly. So if you delay means if you don't, when you don't apply sufficient effort, you delay and you will miss the object. And mind will not penetrate into the meditative object. Not just to be on time, but to penetrate into the meditative object as well, effort is required. The simile is this: a stone gently placed on the surface of water sinks slowly, but a stone that is forcefully thrown plunges swiftly to the bottom of water. In this way, to plunge into the object with precision and depth, strong and timely effort is necessary. So now again, we can think about the importance of effort. I have already discussed much the effort. So this is the another importance of effort. To catch or to capture the meditative object on time, you need sufficient effort, because physicality, mentality rise and pass away so swiftly. If there is no sufficient effort, you will delay, you will not be able to catch on time. Moreover, to develop mindfulness, because mindfulness is not the ordinary awareness here. Here, mindfulness means the non-wobbling quality, So that means non-superficiality, or the mental quality that sinks or plunges into the object. And to plunge or sink into the object, again, you need sufficient effort. Without sufficient effort, you cannot plunge or sink into the meditative object or meditation object. So to capture on time and to plunge into the meditative object, again, the effort is necessary. The effort is necessary. And with the application of effort, with the application of accurate aiming or initial application, followed by sustained application, which keeps the mind steadily on the meditative object. And these mental qualities, when they work together, and when meditators keep applying these mental qualities moment by moment, perception keeps recognizing, recording. At the beginning, mindfulness is yet to be present. At the beginning of the practice, just perception. It knows, it recognizes rising as rising, falling as falling, thinking as thinking, planning as planning, sensation as sensation, feeling as feeling, movement of the feet as movement of the feet, or lifting as lifting, dropping as dropping, lifting, moving, dropping as lifting, moving, dropping, and movements of the body as movements of the body. And as you observe repeatedly and continuously with consistency, the recognition and recording become form and the steadfast, and that is the main cause or the proximate cause to give rise the mindfulness. That is the proximate cause to give rise the mindfulness. That is why we always remind yogis to observe the presently arising object continuously without discrimination. I just mentioned about without discrimination, yogis, meditators have to observe the presently arising object. Like a recorder, a video or audio recorder never discriminates. Similarly, meditators should not discriminate the object, should not judge, should not analyze, should not think about the object, but just to recognize and to record as it is. If you apply this guidance, then automatically, spontaneously, mindfulness arises. And this is not the ordinary mindfulness, this is the well established, steadfastly established on the meditative object, which does not floats away on the surface of meditative object, but sinks or plunge into the meditative object. So this is the characteristics of the mindfulness. So we will continue more about, we will talk more about the mindfulness in coming days. So for today, this is how the genuine mindfulness is generated, and the generation of this authentic or steadfast mindfulness is the first or the foremost priority in this meditation practice, and it is the very foundation upon which concentration and all insight depend. So that's why may all meditators uh, be able to develop genuine, authentic mindfulness by application of accurate aiming or initial application, followed by sustained application, and with the help of sufficient effort and by development of mindfulness, may you be able to develop concentration and wisdom.